Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Expert Cost Saving Tips, Budgeting in the New Normal, presented by Meetings Today. My name is Tyler Davidson. I'm Vice President and Chief Content Director with Meetings Today, and I'm excited to welcome you to this webinar, one of many that we offer. Our webinars cover a variety of topics that are all very important to the meetings industry, so we hope you'll join us for them all. And of course, we also offer a number of newsletters in addition to our monthly magazine. And be sure to check us out on the web at meetingstoday.com. Today's webinar is worth 1 clock hour of credit in the financial management domain toward the CMP application through the EIC. To receive credit for attending this webinar, you must be present for the full hour. And upon completion of the webinar survey, you will be taken to the related Meetings Today Webinar Club page to obtain your credit. And we encourage you to ask questions during the presentation. You may submit your questions at any time by typing your question in the designated Q&A area and then by hitting send. And then also check out our chat function too. People love to contribute their thoughts there. And then should you experience any technical difficulties, please send a message in the Q&A area or chat area, or just call 800-553-8878. Let's quickly review our learning objectives for today's course. During the webinar, you will learn how to understand our current marketplace and how it affects a planner's strategy during negotiations, to discuss potential hidden fees and how to circumvent the unexpected, to learn creative cost savings measures to impact your bottom line, and to measure your success with the creation of a cost savings report so you can communicate these savings to your stakeholders in an impactful way. Now I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Robin Mikowitz. Robin Mikowitz, CMP CMM, is the strategic partner with Innovate Meetings and Events and is an industry leader and innovator. She is a frequent speaker at meetings events, providing cutting-edge education to the meetings and events industry. She continually contributes articles to several meetings industry trade publications on a wide range of topics, from strategic meetings management, contract strategy, budget and cost savings techniques, and more. Robin has earned the prestigious CMP and CMM certifications, and she is past president of the MPI Orange County chapter and has served as chair of an MPI International Task Force. As president, she was responsible for overseeing a 19-member board and 400-member chapter, and received the 2014 MPI Rise Award for Member of the Year, and was also recognized by the CIC, now the Events Industry Council, in 2013 with the Pacesetters Award. She continues to advance the meetings industry through industry volunteerism, serving on multiple advisory boards and consulting MPI chapters on strategic initiatives. And with that, I would like to extend a warm welcome and hand things over to today's speaker. Welcome, Robin.
Thank you, Tyler, and thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. It's an honor to be here with you. Cost savings is always an important topic, and I'm really excited to dive in with you to share some creative ways to save money for your organization. Before we get into some creative cost-saving tips, it's important that we talk about the state of the industry, trends we're seeing, and really how that will affect the way we do business. Obviously, we find ourselves in a very fluid situation for the time being, but I know that many of us are anxious to get back to face-to-face meetings. Meetings are essential. And while I believe hybrid meetings are here to stay, nothing can replace the face-to-face experience. So I know Tyler just mentioned real quickly our goals for today. I think it's really important to talk about hotel revenue management, how they really value your meeting. And while we know that it is a buyer's market currently and a lot of hotels are hungry for business, there still are a lot of hotels, specifically in 2021 and some in 2022, that are still fully booked because they had so many meetings move from 2020 to 2021. So something to keep in mind. You want to understand, how these strategies save your money organization, and not just saving your money organization, but capturing those savings before the contract signed, after the contract signed, when you're on site, and tracking all of those savings, communicating that to your stakeholders. I know a lot of meeting planning departments have been downsized, and I think it's really critical to show the value that you bring to your organization with real dollar amounts, numbers you could defend, and show, why you're the one that's still there your organization and the value that you're bringing to the table. So obviously, there's so much uncertainty, but things are evolving daily. And while this uncertainty is a challenge for both meeting professionals and hoteliers alike, I know we don't really know what for certain what 2021 will look like. But the good news is that there are a lot of hotels that are ready to make deals. This will affect everything from better sleeping room rates, lower food and beverage minimums, complimentary meeting space, and of course, more leniency on attrition and cancellation terms. So analysts really expect to see pre-COVID business demand back in 2023 and 2024. That's saying that we'll get back to similar numbers to what we were seeing pre-COVID. Current average hotel occupancy this past week was at 50%. Hotels group rates are really expected to decline up to 20% in 2021. This will obviously depend on demand, the hotel location, it really varies. So let's definitely pay close attention for deals. When it comes to air and group travel, not only have airlines reduced their flight offerings, but they're also reducing flight capacity. So this may drive pricing up, something to be aware of. Sanitation and social distancing practices really seem to vary dramatically between airlines, some obviously handling it better than others. The challenge really is that there's no standards or requirements per se for hotels or airlines. Everyone's still kind of doing their own thing, trying to figure out how to navigate meetings and travel moving forward. Some airlines have chosen to block middle seats and limit capacity in an effort to achieve social distancing. Delta seems to be handling the pandemic best. American Airlines and United Airlines seem to be operating at full capacity, and they've ceased blocking those middle seats. So Delta has committed to maintaining this practice for the time being, and they keep extending that. Regarding technology, obviously, most meeting professionals are incorporating some form of digital technology into their programs, specifically around SMM data, which is strategic meetings management, or some components of it. Looking at hybrid meetings are here to stay. This will be, we'll see this throughout 2021 and beyond. It's a great way to expand your reach. Not everyone will be comfortable navigating back to face-to-face. You could reach attendees that probably wouldn't be able to attend otherwise. When it comes to meetings, many hotels have really issued new standards for cleanliness and social distancing practices. Sometimes they're calling that a duty of care. So I would definitely request that from all of your hotel partners. And those are evolving standards. Basically, every hotel is kind of evolving with new dynamics in place. So have a conversation with your hotel contract, have them provide diagrams of your meeting space layout so you understand what those dynamics are, how it will impact your meeting. And you truly need to think of everything from arrival to departure and every area in between. So survey results show that promotions and incentives are really going to encourage a stronger return. This is going to be important. Flexible contract terms. Those that have previously traveled to events will travel again. 89% who traveled to events within the last 24 months will travel again. 70% are motivated to return, according to Enigma research, with 2,000 people surveyed. And 18% will not attend until they're able to get the vaccine. Some feel that, streaming events, virtual tours are appealing alternatives. And event goers are likely to support brands that continue to support canceled or postponed events. That last box and last comment is essential. We are all in this together. We have to work together. We need to find mutually agreeable terms for both parties. And the hotels that are being most flexible, working with groups to find the best outcome, those hotels and those sales contacts, they're going to cement lasting relationships that will drive future business to their hotels. I have to say, just personally, thankfully, most of the hotels that we've worked with have been really wonderful throughout 2020 and even early 2021. They've worked with us to find a reasonable outcome for meetings affected by COVID-19. For the few that have been really tough or not willing to budge, we're going to remember which hotels those are and which hotels gave us the most pushback. And we're not going to want to bring business there, especially with so much uncertainty still. Oops, let's go back one slide. Here we go. On a positive note, here's a graphic that shows that 54% of those surveyed are extremely likely to return to live events. 19% said they're likely to return. So basically, in a nutshell, about 3/4 surveyed said they plan to come back to live events. Here are some of the top factors that influence where meetings are booked. Surprisingly, organizations are still really driven through the rewards program as one of the top influencers for determining where a meeting is booked. I find this interesting because the organization might not choose the best value, but where the rewards loyalties lie. Ease of airlift, of course, is always another top influencers. Following these factors are past experiences, which is understandable. Obviously, location of the hotel equally important. One of the things I've been hearing from some of my clients that I work with is, since they're not really doing site inspections right now, or maybe just virtual tours, they're trying to go back to hotels they've worked with previously. So it's just really a turnkey kind of thing. So to encourage attendance to live events, some things you need to consider: obviously hand washing and sanitation stations throughout your events, not just bathrooms. I'm sure we've all seen those portable hand washing stations at outdoor events, and there's ones available for rental for indoor use that are really nice looking. Hand sanitizer is, of course, a great sponsorship opportunity, handing out to your attendees upon arrival, branded face mask. So look for sponsorship opportunities there as well. We're all seeing that, all of the staff, food workers are being required to wear masks, having contactless security screening at entrances, contactless registration. And when it comes to social distancing and really enforcing that, I have been having a lot of conversations with my hotel partners around that. And what I'm hearing from a lot of different hotels is that it's a mutual effort. So the hotel staff and your event staff working together to ensure social distancing is enforced. It doesn't seem to fall on one party, so something to be aware of. Temperature checks also really important. And I know there's some really high-tech machines now that can, check more than one person at a time. So something to think about. So according to North Star Meetings Group, as of just last week, some of the top US destinations being booked in 2021 are Orlando and Dallas. Florida is currently operating at full capacity when social distancing protocols are met. There's no restrictions on group gathering size. Orlando was a top draw throughout 2020 as well. Texas and Nebraska are allowing indoor events at 75% capacity. Georgia and Iowa have no restrictions in terms of capacity. And South Dakota is currently on a back to normal plan with no limitations on group gathering size. New Hampshire and Missouri are also allowing groups of all sizes. So those are just the top states that are really open at this point. And it's, of course, a very fluid situation. Group gathering restrictions are changing regularly. International, this is a big question mark for the time being. As of yesterday, January 26th, any travel into the US will now require a negative COVID-19 test to clear travel back to the United States. This is going to be very important for everyone to be aware of. Obviously, Mexico has had the biggest draw for ease of access for groups from the United States. In 2020 and going into 2021, it's been a huge draw for groups and individual travel in general. I want to point out that a couple of hotel chains, AM Resorts and Posadas USA, which Fiesta Americana Hotels falls under, they've both announced an inclusion of a COVID-19 antigen test on property, and most importantly, at no cost to attendees or groups, with same-day results. AM Resorts has even gone on to say if a guest were to receive a positive test while on property that would prevent them from traveling, that they're going to cover the cost of quarantine at the property for up to 14 days. I think that's an incredible offer. And with offers like that, that's going to provide some confidence for groups that want to move forward with their programs. So understanding hotel profit margins is important. You need to have some negotiation power. And yes, we find ourselves in a buyer's market. However, like I said, there's a lot of meetings that were moved from 2020 to 21 because they wanted to avoid cancellation fees, and even parts of 22. I've actually found a lot of hotels that are fully booked for 21. So just something to be aware of, because if your hotel of interest is limited on availability, then they actually still are in a position to be choosy on which groups they select. Of course, there are several hotels that still need business that will take anything they can get. So definitely explore your options, find out what other groups are in house and how busy they are over your dates. And that kind of helps you understand, what factors are at play. Profit margins really vary by hotel. So this is just an average of independent chains and independent properties. The average gross profit on sleeping rooms is about 75% gross profit, the biggest profit margin. So that's where you have the most wiggle room. Food and beverage is about 35% gross profit. And then that's followed by, the hotel restaurants, the different outlets at property, as long as they're owned, at 25%. And then all of the different outlets like spa, golf, activities is 15%, along with retail. So use these averages when you're calculating damages into your contract for cost savings. If the hotel has a different profit margin, ask what that is. Do your homework. This is just a good average. Know your spend in all of these categories and have your history available. You should be requesting this in your post-meeting evaluation report once your meeting has actualized, and you should address it in your contract, because the hotel does not have to provide all of this different data to you. So if you want to be able to track all of your spend categories, note that in your contract, and so the hotel provides that detail for you, especially like transient spend as well. If you have attendees doing lunch, dinner on your own, there are ways to track that. You'd have to have a conversation up front with your hotel partner. It's not something that can just be asked at the end. So all hotels, big or small, chain or independent, they have revenue management standards. And this is how they maximize occupancy and revenues. It's important to carefully assess your RFP against each of these revenue management criteria, and this will enhance the value-based negotiation process. Some of the variables that will influence pricing and availability: you're going to look at demand over your dates, who's in-house, what's a transient business in-house? So those are individual travelers. Maybe it's, a ski destination you're going in the winter, so they might have a lot of transient demand, and individual travelers are going to pay a higher group rate than groups would pay. So something to think about. For a larger group, what's the hotel's group cap? Look at your meeting pattern. Can you shift by day? Would that make any difference? How does your pattern fit into what the hotel's selling pattern is? Every hotel is different. Look at your food and beverage spend, your history. If you have pickup that's poor, and hotels do share that information, it's something to be aware of. You want to look at your rooms to space ratio, find some balance, ways that you can get creative. Something to just think about, because you need to look at the overall value of your account from every spend category, possible, future bookings, or maybe doing a multi-year agreement within that specific hotel, or even with that brand could be something to work out with a global sales contact. Even with your peak night pattern, that could save you like 20% off your group rate if you shift your pattern by day, or if you could be a little more flexible. When it comes to rooms to space, typically if you take 30% of the hotel's room block, they'll give you 30% of their meeting space. And we talked about food and beverage being the second largest profit center. So keep track of what your spend is. Use that as a negotiation tool. So if the hotel comes in with an F&B minimum, let's say it's $50,000, and you're going to spend $75,000, that could be part of your negotiation tactics. When it comes to season, every hotel, domestic, international, has a high, low, and off season. So understand the demand over your dates. Look at all of your spend categories, even if it's not to the group master account, even if it's individual spend at spa, golf. This all plays into the negotiations equation. Really just make sure that you understand your flexibility points. Ask your hotel partner how you can make your meeting more attractive if there's any challenges. And then if you need to speak with the revenue manager, don't be afraid to take it up the chain if needed. So let's get into some cost savings tips. Real quickly, I'll just kind of go over some food and beverage trends that were on the rise in early 2020. And these will continue to be important as we move into 2021. Sustainability, nutrition, and wellness continue to be top of mind. Brain boosting foods that don't cause an afternoon slump is key. Customization will continue to be important. Unconventional flavors, plant-based proteins, eco-friendly packaging, looking at paper straws versus plastic straws. Even with everything being packaged separately now, there's still lots of eco-friendly packaging options. So you want to look at your food and beverage terms in your contract. I always request that the hotel sets 5% over whatever we've guaranteed at no charge. So if we have 100 attendees, they'll provide 105 plates as an example. Attrition on food and beverage. A lot of groups forget to negotiate this, but this goes hand in hand with your room pickup. If your attendance decreases, you obviously negotiate slippage for your sleeping rooms, but you also need to take into account spend on food and beverage. And thankfully, we had that in place for a lot of our groups, and that was able to save us money because attendance decreased, which I'm sure a lot of you will be experiencing throughout 2021, and at least you have a course of action. You want to look at a discount for food and beverage, obviously across the board, sliding scale discount based on spend. And if you meet your revenue, you could potentially negotiate additional concessions. So let's say you guaranteed $100,000 food and beverage minimum. Let's say you say, oh, well, if I meet this minimum, maybe I'll get these additional concessions. Something to think about. You can look at the hotel menus to determine your food and beverage guarantee, and even be willing to work with the chef to customize menus that are budget friendly. We have some budget conscious groups, and so we actually negotiate the menus before the contract's signed, and we actually include those menus outlined with pricing and specific details of the menu in the contract. So don't be afraid to have those conversations for groups that might be budget conscious. Piggyback onto other groups in-house. So if you're not the only group in-house, what's the other group ordering over your dates? Think about purchasing economies of scale. So if they're buying in bulk, a bigger order, that you're going to save money. Locally sustainable food options, everything locally sourced, there's savings to be had there. You can reuse desserts for breaks. Again, now everything's individually packaged, so it's totally safe to do so. Open wine bottles can be saved for a VIP suite. Consider charging drinks on consumption. You can get credit for cash bars. That's a big one. So if you have, let's say you're giving maybe 2 tickets to your attendees and all other drinks are on their own, well, you can capture credit for those cash bars towards your F&B minimum requirements. And that would be really helpful if you're worried about meeting that F&B minimum. But of course, that's a conversation you would need to have upfront. If you want to do like an offsite, there's a lot of hotels that have like offsite venues, or maybe they can cater to different nearby venues or facilities. So you can capture that as part of your F&B spend instead of going completely offsite where the hotel doesn't get to capture some of that revenue. I'm seeing a lot of incentives. Now, something to be aware of, you need to ask what incentives are available. They're not always offering those up. Not only asking your hotel partner, but ask the CVB if they have any incentives. And if they do, and they say, oh yes, we can do, let's say, a complimentary reception. Just because they said that doesn't mean you're going to get it. You need to make sure it's addressed in your contract. You can even talk about complimentary staff breaks, reduced staff meal pricing. There's all sorts of options available. Negotiate what works best for your group and what will impact your bottom line. Look at pricing for plated versus buffet, tray pass versus station. Take into account all of the options. Some hotels have decor and linen on site. Maybe that can be negotiated complimentary. I mean, they already own it, so there's no cost for them, so it doesn't hurt to try. Make sure you control your alcohol pours and always inventory the bar before and after. You want to have some accountability. Look for sponsorship opportunities for your meals and breaks. We talked about sponsorship for hand sanitizer. There's all sorts of sponsorship opportunities available. When it comes to plated desserts, honestly, most people don't even eat the dessert anyway, so a lot goes to waste. A less expensive option might be like a dessert station, like a cookie station, grab and go. Again, these can be individually wrapped for safety, and you could save and reuse anything that's not been used. Repurpose any leftovers from breakfast or the AM break, like muffins, fruit. Again, with safety guidelines, these are wrapped, so they're not left out, and that's safe to do so. When it comes to lunches, I'm seeing more organizations move to a boxed lunch versus a group plated or buffet lunch due to the pandemic. Obviously, there's cost savings in doing so. And I'm seeing a lot of hotels willing to reduce the F&B spend they may have expected pre-COVID to allow groups to reduce their F&B offerings. So even if you have a program contracted for 2021, don't be afraid to go back to your hotel partner to see if you can get your F&B reduced. See how they can work with you. Honestly, most of the hotels we're working with for contracted groups have been so flexible. We did an addendum to reduce some of our burden with F&B or pickup, offering more lenient attrition clauses. So something to think about. On the flip side, there's more and more companies completely eliminating box lunches altogether because they found their attendees go off site for lunch anyways. So you know your attendees best. Think about what's going to work best for your organization. We talked about controlled refills for alcohol, but think about coffee as well. Make sure you communicate in advance that you want to fill on request only. You can consider doing an awards program for breakfast, which is obviously a lot cheaper than dinner, especially with moving into 21 and budget cuts. There's always ways around it. You could order food items in quantities versus per person. Look at the cost of a fresh fruit platter versus paying per person. Continuous beverages always sound nice, but you could think about providing food and beverage only at structured break times. That's a great way to reduce cost. Instead of a full hot breakfast, you can go with a continental breakfast and maybe just add one hot egg item as an example. And ask your hotel partner for ideas. They always have ideas. They know what they've done before. There's things that they've done probably I haven't even thought about. So definitely have conversations with your hotel partner. Share with them your concerns. Ask for ideas. Find out what they've done for other groups. They're always willing to share those details. Audio visual. I recommend meeting with the AV team during your site visit to discuss your needs up front. And you want to request a formal proposal with pricing at that time as well. If you're not doing a site visit, you can still begin conversations via phone and email. You can certainly negotiate a flat rate discount starting at 10% and up, depending on your group size. Obviously, a bigger discount for a bigger group. We have some groups that will bring in their own LCD projectors or basic AV equipment like flip charts and markers, for example. This is something that you can negotiate at no charge, but again, it has to be addressed in your agreement. I would consider doing an organization-wide AV partnership agreement if you do a lot of programs, or if there's others on your team who are also doing meetings. You can consider an umbrella agreement with, like, let's say PSAV as an example, or an outside AV provider. That way you don't have to negotiate a discount every time. You have a company-wide partnership agreement with that AV company already, and you automatically get your discount, and it's pretty straightforward, a lot more turnkey. And then they'll know your AV setups and needs right off the bat, so you don't have to go through the whole description every time. When it comes to Wi-Fi, you want to be strategic. Know your usage from your last event. If you run a dedicated line in your meeting room, reuse that meeting room as much as possible to get the most bang for your buck. Travel with your own extension cords or surge protectors. Sometimes these can cost a fortune if you need them at the spur of the moment. So something to be thinking about. Talk about getting other bids from multiple AV companies. You can negotiate to bring in your own outside AV at no charge. You should negotiate comp basic Wi-Fi in the meeting space, and finding more and more hotels willing to do that. If you're at, like, let's say, a large hotel and you have extensive staging and setups, maybe you could find out who might be moving out the day you're arriving and see if you can potentially piggyback on their AV setups. We actually have had several groups do that, found out what was already in place from another group, had them leave that up, and there was some significant savings there. Don't forget, there's also things that you wouldn't even think about that hotels are starting to charge for. Wall electricity. Most of us expect this as a standard provision, but you could arrive on site and this would unexpectedly impact your budget if you don't plan ahead. So you want to include wall electricity included at no additional charge. Look at what you can purchase or print on site to reduce shipping fees. I know another area to consider would be your hybrid meeting needs. Hybrid meetings are the future. They are here to stay. They offer organizations a way to expand your reach, to access attendees who might not be ready to navigate back to face-to-face, and it's another solid revenue source. I'm sure most of us have spent this past year really becoming savvy virtual meeting experts. which was quite an unexpected turn of events. And what I found in my research is that there's a significant pricing variance between virtual meeting platforms. Of course, the functionality needs will affect pricing, but there's really a wide gap in pricing out there. Um, I would request several quotes. Don't be afraid to negotiate pricing and additional future add-ons. Look at your different pricing and compare like line item to line item and see where you might have some areas you can negotiate. I've even had industry friends who have found a way to use existing company WebEx platform, and they're doing all their virtual meetings on a platform that they already have. So this is saving them a huge amount of money, and just, explore what technology you have in place already. Think about all of your options. And when it comes to virtual meetings, another area to not overlook would be your hotel. For example, Lowe's Hotels just introduced a new approach to virtual and hybrid meetings. It's called Streamline by Lowe's. This is a brand-wide initiative, and their goal is to offer a turnkey solution with state-of-the-art technology and packages to meet every budget. So something to think about. I'm sure more and more hotels will begin to offer this as well. I had an interesting conversation the other day. We had a group that needed to cancel, and it was, I'm typically seeing with force majeure, most hotels saying about 2 months out, and they're canceling well in advance outside that window. And so what the hotel did to work with us is they said, if you let our in-house AV provider manage your virtual meeting for you for 2021, then we'll waive your cancellation fees. So get creative, have conversations, have them propose options to you if you're in a bind. You never know what solutions you could come up with. So we talked a lot about different savings, but what's really important is that you think about hotel fees and surcharges. While I don't have the numbers for 2020 just yet, I do want to share that in 2019, hotel fees and surcharges had hit an all-time high of $2.93 billion. This was driven then by an increase in occupied hotel rooms and new and additional hotel fee and surcharge categories. When it comes to resort fees, always review the inclusions and determine if you really need the items offered. You could even ask a resort fee to be reduced or even waived regardless. Everything's negotiable. If you do get the resort fee reduced, include the specific amount in the contract and note that it cannot be changed. Also note what the resort fee includes, so those inclusions can't be revised. One thing that I've seen just in 2020 is that a lot of hotels weren't charging resort fees since they weren't even able to offer all of those amenities. So look at what the resort fee includes. Is the hotel even able to offer all of that, during this time? So there's another negotiation tactic for you. Urban hotel fees. These are a newer fee that's hit the market, and it's accounted for the largest share of fee and surcharge increases. What these fees are, urban hotel fees, it's basically a resort fee. It's what major cities are doing to capture additional revenue. And the urban hotel fee can really range from $20 to $40. It's a city hotel's way to charge a resort fee. And here's the thing, while room rates might be remaining flat or even reduced in some cases, hotels have to make up for all of this lost revenue. I mean, they're struggling. They've been hit significantly, as you can imagine. So they're going to do it with hotel fees and surcharges. So you better be aware of what's coming, things that you might not have even thought about. And I'll talk about how to address that in just a moment. Another fee that's really emerging a lot is early check-in fees. Las Vegas has really stepped up on that. Looking at portage and bellman fees. If you have a group and they're not even using the bellman, or, you have to think about those things. Let them pay those maid and bellman gratuities on their own instead of like a mandatory charge, because sometimes they're not even using the bellman. Look at your meeting room rental. I always say I would never pay a meeting room rental. I mean, I'd rather pay an additional food and beverage spend, so that shows value to my attendees instead of just throwing it away in a room rental. That's pure profit for the hotel. You could look at getting complimentary audits for like rooms outside of the block, because hotels would charge for that otherwise. And then you want to include a clause that basically states that no additional hotel fees or surcharges can be added after the contract's signed. That one sentence is a huge game changer, because honestly, like if you'd asked me a couple of years ago, I never would have thought about wall electricity. Now I know about that, so I addressed it in my contracts. But there's going to be charges that we couldn't even think about right now. I mean, there could even be a COVID surcharge. You never know. So you want to think about all of those areas, make sure nothing can be added after the contract signed, that everything's clearly addressed in your contract. Just always prepare for the unexpected and know that there could be things we could have never anticipated. Other ways to save, if you can, negotiate a multi-year deal with key vendors, not just your AV providers or hotel. Look at any of your vendors that you have support for your meeting, even like virtual meeting support. Transportation, you could consider ride sharing services like Uber or Lyft to save on transportation costs, providing attendees with a code and only paying for what is used. You really just want to look at trimming the fat. What do you really need? We're going to get back to the basics. Look at second tier cities versus first tier destinations. Smaller cities are hungry for business. They're going to offer better rates, more concessions. They really want your business. And you know, I notice that right up front, whenever I'm negotiating with a hotel before the contract sign, you can tell who really is being flexible, who really wants to work with you. And I often find that that carries through to the execution on site of my events. If you could tell that, you know, they have tons of business and, you know, they could take it or leave it with your program because another group will be interested, that seems to play out when you're on site as well. So if you want to have the best service, think about those hotels that really need the business. You can request a discount for paying your bill on site. Reconcile your bill daily and see if you can get like a discount if you pay, you know, on your departure day instead of paying like 30 days later, as an example. Most importantly, you want to make sure that you are charged correctly. Get everything in writing, even things that you add on site. Make sure you provide authority to charge items to the master that to select individuals. So a speaker can't just ask for something on their own that you don't approve. You want to let them know who is allowed to charge items to the master, get everything signed off on BEOs. You can ask for separate master accounts for easy reconciliation. So you don't just get one bill with everything thrown in there. That's so hard to reconcile. And if you don't negotiate that, those separate master accounts in your contract, they could charge you for that. You want to compare the invoice to your backup. I mean, honestly, it's amazing how many inaccurate charges are on the bill. So make sure you're paying super close attention to that. So when it comes to the contract, I know a lot of meeting professionals focus on the value adds, concessions. Obviously agree, that's important. But another really critical component that should be top priority is risk reduction and cost containment measures. This means taking the necessary precautions to prevent a huge financial burden in the case of the unexpected. And frankly, 2020 and 2021 are going to be the years of everything unexpected, as I'm sure we can all agree. Some insider tips. It's important to note that hotels are showing flexibility on previously contracted terms. This has obviously been very rare in the past, but understandable during this current climate. We've actually gone back to all of our contracts for 2021 to negotiate more lenient attrition clauses, cancellation clauses, lowered food and beverage minimums. I'd have to say most of the hotels are extremely flexible and willing to make adjustments. And once they've agreed to that, confirm it in writing with an addendum. And just while we're on this topic, I'd like to give a shout out to all the amazing hotel partners out there because we appreciate this. We will not forget the hotels are being good partners during this time. So don't be afraid to go back to all of your existing contracts and have, even if you want to release rooms early, hotels are willing to take those rooms earlier. Let's say you think you're only going to pick up half your block. Communicate that to your hotel partner early so they could work on reselling. And they could work with you to eliminate some of the damages that you could potentially pay. If you're unsure of holding your meeting in 2021, maybe you can ask the hotel to freeze your cancellation tier before it hops up to a higher amount. Maybe come up with a new date. Rather than canceling your meeting, I've had hotels say, you know what, we can downsize your program significantly. We'll just make it 50%. Or, hey, just come and we'll not charge any attrition or cancellation fee. Come, whoever comes, we'll take it. So have those conversations, ask for options and ideas. You could delay your deposits. That's another option to think about. Obviously, if you have to cancel your meeting, see if you can get full credit to a future program. And always, always, always confirm everything in writing. So rate integrity, this is really important. One of the biggest things I often see is that groups find out 1 month out that they're seeing a lower rate on the hotel's website itself, lower than their group rate. Obviously, we know there's wholesale websites like hotels.com, several others, but they only offer a limited amount of rooms at those highly discounted rates. But I think it's embarrassing. If your attendees are finding lower rates on the hotel's website, guess what? They're going to book around the block because they want a better rate. Fair. I mean, who wouldn't do that? But now that's going to affect your pickup. So it's important to negotiate into your contract that if the hotel is offering a lower rate on their website, promoting special rates over your meeting dates, that they either match that rate for your group or remove it from their inventory. This ensures the integrity of your group rate, and this ensures your group pickup as well. You could also negotiate a clause that says regardless of rate paid, you get credit for pickup purposes, even rooms around the block. But again, you cannot expect that. If you don't have the language clearly outlining that in the contract, they don't have to do any of that for you. And you need to be able to defend that clause. You can say that these rooms and these people, attendees, were at the hotel because of your event. They never would have been there otherwise. You definitely want to think about a hotel audit process. And again, always have everything in writing so that you have a leg to stand on when challenges arrive. As I stated earlier, hotels typically make about 75% gross profit on sleeping rooms. If your group experiences attrition, it's fair to pay the hotel's profit margin on sleeping rooms. So I'm just going to give you a really simple example. If you had a $100 room rate, I would never pay damages at that $100 room rate. I would pay it at 75% or $75 in this example. That's a big savings if you calculated that out by a 1,000 room block. And obviously your rate's probably much higher than that. So do the math on your group. No hotel makes 100% profit on their rooms. If they come back and they're like, hey, our profit margin's 80% or 85%, that's fine, but that's way better than paying the full room rate. Include the calculations in your agreement. And you want to really make sure that you look at attrition terms even for contracted meetings now. Again, Lowe's Hotels has come out again stating that they're offering no attrition or cancellation fees throughout all of 2021. And I love seeing hotels that are really working with us to drive business, to provide some confidence and comfort for us, those who are looking to book new business for 21 and beyond. Cancellation. I'd like to challenge everybody to pull some of your past contracts because it always states what happens if your organization cancels on the hotel, always. However, why do so many of us forget to address what happens if the hotel cancels on you? Now, this could have huge financial ramifications for your organization. The goal here is really to ensure both parties are protected. That is fair. You could do this by saying you could do a mutual cancellation clause, saying that you would both pay the same amount based on the date of cancellation. Or you could potentially outline the cost your organization would incur, at which point you would need to have all documentation provided. I mean, I've seen hotels cancel business for more profitable business. So it's something to think about. And especially in 21, if you're like a small group and then they have another group that wants to buy out and is going to spend, a lot in F&B or their outlets, absolutely they'll cancel on you. I mean, I had two hotels in 2021 cancel on us because they are going to be undergoing a major renovation. So things to think about. When it comes to creating a cost savings report, you want to track all of your savings in a contract. And then you want to track savings on site. And you should be able to prepare these reports by meeting. So you can share, by meeting, quarterly, annually with your stakeholders. You really want to validate your success more than ever. Show the value you bring to the organization. You can do this with a simple Excel spreadsheet. I go back, once my contract's signed, I look at all of my concessions. And I ask the hotel to provide a realistic value for every concession in the contract. You never want to use rack rates. You never want to use inflated numbers. Let's look at the meeting space. Let's say the meeting space was always complimentary. Don't put that the hotel was going to charge you $5,000 when they never were. But if you negotiated, let's say they were trying to charge you, let's say $3,000 for meeting room rental, and you were able to get that complimentary, then yes, that should be a savings that's noted and communicated. So I think it's really important to have a walkaway plan if it comes down to that. If a hotel is not budging on crucial clauses, sometimes there's no other choice. I always like to have another hotel as a backup. So let's say we did a site visit. We've narrowed to 2 hotels. Let's say the first hotel has like a take it or leave it approach, and the second hotel is like willing to agree to everything we need. I mean, in this situation, even though you might have wanted that first hotel, you have to think about the fact that this could be a precursor of what's going to come. So if we had moved forward with our first choice, what would have happened as we got closer to the meeting? When we were on site? What happens if something like the unexpected this past year happened and we need to reduce some of our commitments on food and beverage or sleeping rooms? They're going to be just as difficult. And in the instance that you have no choice, you want to communicate to your stakeholders the areas that the hotel will not budge on, why those areas are important to protect your organization, because sometimes, your powers that be will still want to move forward, but you need to show that you did your due diligence and show your value in case, anything happens. So I'm going to open it up for Q&A in just a moment. I have some great follow-up tools that I'm happy to share with you. I've put my email up on the screen. If there's any questions that we don't get to or you want to have a sidebar conversation, I'm always available. Feel free to reach out to me anytime. If you want help with some contract clauses, reviewing one of your existing contracts, or if you just want some different tools and resources, let me know. Here's my email, and I will pass it over to Tyler for some Q&A.
Thank you, Robin. Great in-depth presentation. A lot of great tips in there. So thanks for sharing that. Just wondering, as a general question, we've been through a really difficult time, and I guess people are hoping in-person events will ramp up here soon. What do you think people out there need to be thinking about budgeting specifically during this pandemic era and where we're at right now?
I think for future meetings that aren't booked, for smaller groups, we're doing letters of intent. So it's a simple letter stating that we're going to have this many rooms, this amount of space, and there's no liability at all. So the hotel would not charge any attrition or any cancellation fees. So you can sign that contract or sign that letter of intent with ease, because you can cancel the day before and there's no penalties whatsoever. And I'm doing that with some of my smaller groups, like board of director type programs. For bigger groups, again, Lowe's Hotels right off the bat said no attrition or cancellation for all of 2021. And if I'm going to a hotel that's not Lowe's, I'm letting them know other hotels that are doing that. Mm-hmm. And if they're really pushing back on that, then at least I'll try to get 50% attrition, lower cancellation terms. I'll reduce deposits or push the dates out. And I include a stronger force majeure clause. I include a duty of care clause. So a duty of care clause, this is a new clause that we've added, this past year, something we never thought about, but it addresses sanitation, it addresses social distancing, and it ensures that there is some standards in place to put your attendees at ease. And then even if you have contracted business, don't be afraid to go back to kind of reduce some of your commitments or work with a hotel to resell earlier. But I think we can move forward with meetings, and we certainly are with a lot of our groups, because we're getting really lenient terms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an interesting question that just came in about, what if we have contracts already in place for, 2021, 22, 23 that were executed years ago? Are there contract clauses we should address in those already executed contracts?
Yes, I would recommend everybody to pull their 2021 contracts. You could maybe for 22, I'm not seeing hotels really willing to discuss that, but for 2021, pull your contracts. Determine, reach out to your attendees and seeing what things are looking like for them. Everybody knows their groups best. You could reduce your room block so the hotel can resell the rooms earlier. You could negotiate, let's say you had 80% attrition. Maybe you can see if they can make that 60% or 50%. Start with 50, and because they might counter and say, we'll do 70 or 60%. See if you can get your food and beverage minimum reduced. Most hotels are being really flexible. And so once we've negotiated new terms, I'll confirm everything with an addendum, make sure both the hotel signs and dates and that you sign and date as well. And then that's reduced our burden for existing contracted business.
What would compel a hotel to give in to something like that or negotiate?
They just want the business. They would rather you come instead of canceling the meeting. Now,
Hmm.
some hotels are in areas that aren't as impacted and they're still getting a lot of transient demand. Maybe it's like I said, the winter example. If you're or a beach example, say you're at a beach hotel in summer, they're going to do really well transient business. So they're happy to say, we'll reduce the block because, we're going to get transient demand, which is going to pay a higher rate. So they don't mind. And then other hotels are just wanting the business. They'd rather have the business instead of you canceling, because once it gets to 2 months out, typically you can enforce force majeure at that point. And let's say you're in a destination where they're only allowing 25% capacity. And with your group number size, they literally couldn't hold the meeting. So they'd have to release you without penalty. Wouldn't they rather take what they can get instead of losing everything?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everything's so uncertain. So they really don't have a leg to stand on. And they have to show true partnership now. These are the times we have to stick
Right.
together.
And we had a number of questions come in just to explain more about your duty of care clause, and if there's anything you can share more specifically on that clause.
Yep, absolutely. So duty of care specifically addresses social distancing, sanitation. So I'm actually just going to pull up my clause right now so I can look at it in front of me real
Oh,
quick, and
people
then
will
I
love
can
that if you do
address it
that,
more
definitely.
thoroughly. So basically, let's see. So I address everything from public space and communal areas, frequency of cleaning and sanitation, looking at everything from the front desk, bell desk, elevators, gym equipment, dining areas, sleeping room maintenance. You can potentially request for 48 hours before somebody new checks in. You can make sure that high touch items like remote controls, which I hear are the dirtiest, toilet seats, door handles. I mean, you can think about everything, making sure it's addressed. I know a lot of hotels I've seen personally are doing that sticker where the room's sealed. So, it's been
Hmm.
sanitized, and that obviously provides some comfort. Hand sanitizer dispensers, touchless whenever possible. All the high traffic areas should have those sanitizer stations. A lot of times the front desk will provide masks complimentary for anyone that might have forgot it or just forgot to put it on. Hotel signage, making sure health, hygiene, and physical distancing reminders are throughout the property. So all of the things you need to think about, just put yourself in the mind of your attendee arriving on site at the hotel and every aspect of their experience through departure.
And I would imagine, the local regulations play a big part of this, especially if you have a meeting that you've contracted before the pandemic. I mean, of course, the facility is going to have to fulfill all that, even if just
Exactly. And the biggest
right. I
thing,
mean, there's no way they could say we're not doing that.
oh yeah, the biggest thing I found though is that there's not like one answer for everything, because every hotel is completely different, even in the same city. And obviously every state has different guidelines. So you really need to have that conversation with your hotel partner, get their duty of care overview. They all typically have like like a handout of some sort where it describes what they're doing, what protocols and procedures they have in place. Find out the different guidelines for that state, and then specifically have that conversation with your hotel partner.
Yeah, because I imagine from the hotel's perspective, they have a ballroom that seats X amount of people, and now you can only stick a quarter of them in there. They're just going to have to do that, right? I
And
mean,
again, yeah, they would have to, depending on what state they're in. But there's some states that are fully open, and then there's others. Again, that's like 25%, 50%, and yes, they would have to accommodate that. But you need to be smart. Have a conversation with your hotel partner. Get the diagrams. How is it even going to work? Could it even accommodate your group size? And to give you an example, I had a really big group, and there was just no way the hotel could do it. So they had to release this. This meeting's in June. It's 1,000 attendees. They were hoping to somehow make it work. They weren't going to have that many, I'm sure. But basically, with the hotel's meeting space size, they couldn't physically do it. So they had to release this, even though we don't even know what could change by June, but obviously all the marketing dollars that would be spent. And for a group of that size, I mean, nothing's going to change that dramatically by June. So something to think about based on where the hotel is located.
mhm. Excellent. Well, we're getting near to the end of the program, so we really just have time for one more question. And I just know, talking with people in the industry on the facility and the CVB side, a lot of them are recommending that people begin the process now of securing facilities, in the third or fourth quarter of 2021, when people expect in-person meetings to sort of, get back to a little bit more back to normal. And they say, but put in good out clauses.
Exactly.
And
In
what
fact,
would, maybe expound on that?
sure. In fact, I wouldn't wait to book if you have like are planning fall meetings or third or fourth quarter meetings for 2021. I wouldn't wait because they might not do such lenient terms then. Maybe things have changed and maybe you need more flexibility. I mean, you don't know what your attendees' perspective will be at that time. I mean, nobody can project what's going to happen then, no matter how many webinars I go to. So what I would say is I would encourage everybody to book their 2021 meetings, move forward with them, but get lenient terms. Try and get no attrition and no cancellation fees if you can. For smaller groups, do letters of intents or push out cancellation terms, reduce deposit amounts, have a stronger force majeure clause in place, state if the hotel can't accommodate your entire group size that you'd be released without liability. Maybe you could say force majeure could be implied 4 months out, 6 months out. Think about all of the different options that you would need, even a reduction in food and beverage spend. And as
Mhm.
long as you can get good lenient terms, I would not be concerned about contracting 2021 because you have some outs and you have ways to reduce those burdens. And if you're at a hotel that's not being flexible, that's really risky. I've seen a few hotels that are like, sorry, we can't do any of this. And then we won't sign with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a general realization across the industry that people need to be flexible in
Exactly.
this time.
But it's going to be a lot harder to find availability because there's so many meetings that were moved. And you might not get as great of terms as you might get now. I mean, you have to think about there's value to be had right now. Maybe the rates will be higher then because there's more demand because people are moving back to meetings, or maybe they won't do as lenient of terms. Maybe right now
Yeah.
you can get 50% attrition and then you try to do it last minute and they're only going to give you 80%.
And I wonder too, and this sort of came up in one of the comments, more of a comment than a question, but is there going to be a pent up demand, especially for like training meetings and onboarding, because there's just been such a tumult in the whole, in the economy.
I mean, I definitely think so. People are like zoomed out. I'm
Yeah.
sick of it personally, Virtual meetings can only go so far. People go to meetings to network, real networking, real connections. People want to be face to face. They want to experience the destination. They don't go to meetings just to learn. There's so many other components. And that's something that only face to face can offer. So, yes, hybrid meetings will always be here, but face-to-face meetings is where the true value is at. It's going to come back eventually. And
Well,
do what you
great.
can to put parameters in place so you can move forward with things, with some outs for yourself so you don't have a huge financial burden. And if you need some
Excellent.
advice on clauses, feel free to email me.
Thank you, Robin. On that note, we will close out the presentation. Thanks a bunch, Robin.
You're welcome. And thank you everyone for joining today.
And there's just a few important pieces of information we'd like to share. Be sure to join us on February 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern for virtual event sponsorships and monetization. We hope you can join us for that, and also available on our website. You'll find a vault of information on all of our past webinars, which are available for you to view at any time at your convenience. And then upon completion of this webinar and the survey, you will be redirected to today's webinar club page. Each webinar we do has its own unique webinar club page where you can download the presentation, view the webinar on demand, obtain your CMP credit certificate, and much more. So thanks again to Robin and to all of you for joining us for this webinar. Have a great rest of the day, and we hope to see you again soon.